You're gaining bigger share at the box office. Who's going to the movies right now, and what kind of movies are they watching?
Well, everybody's going to the movies right now. Millennials are going to the movies, Gen Xers are, older people are going to the movies, and they're watching a pretty broad array of movies. So the turnaround really started in earnest with Shang-Chi, which was a Disney blockbuster. Last weekend, Dune, which is kind of crosses a lot of lines, big sci-fi movie. IMAX did over 20% of the U.S. box office on less than 1% of the screens. Bond, more older people, an older demographic went to Bond then went to the last Bond pre-pandemic. So I think it's pretty much across the board.
But Richard, are these kind of viewerships here to stay, or do people go for the right films only?
Well, I mean, remember, IMAX is in the blockbuster business, so it depends on your definition of what the right film is. Over the last decade, every year, take aside the pandemic, generally our box office has been going higher and higher on a global basis. So I think there is no question there's a sustained demand for blockbusters. And if you look at blockbusters as the percentage of overall box office, these big movies keep capturing more and more market share. So I think people go to IMAX because they want a spectacle. They want something different. They want to feel like they're inside the movie.
Something that it feels like everyone's trying to work out is how long do movies stay in the theater before they're released on streaming? I mean, Dune, for example, was released simultaneously. James Bond has a lag. Do you have an idea yet of what that window is going to eventually look like?
Sure, and I think the industry does as well. During the pandemic, a lot of experimentation went on because obviously people, for a lot of reasons, couldn't leave their homes. And there were different models. So there was one where F9 from Universal went directly to theaters and had a window. Warner Brothers released a lot of its slate day and date simultaneously on HBO Max. And other places like Sony or Paramount said, we're going to wait until the world is safer. But since the pandemic has significantly slowed down and people are learning to live with it, almost every studio now has a 45-day window. So Eternals opens in a week with Disney. That's a 45-day window. Spider-Man opens with Sony. That's a 45-day window. Even Warner, which has day and date until the end of the year on their service, said next year they're going to a 45-day window. So that's pretty much become the standard now. And for IMAX, that's fine. We typically play movies for only 1 or 2 weeks, so a 45-day window works very well.
So, Richard, how much market share are you expecting to take? How much bigger can you get compared to some of the more normal, traditional theaters?
That's a difficult question. In the post-pandemic, as you guys said, leading up to this piece, our market share has gone up. And, as I said during Dune, it was incredible. It was 23% of the United States. Now, that's a special movie at a special time. For the blockbusters, the movies we play, we historically have done around 10% of the box office this year so far. And we're a global company, so we're in 85 countries. We've had an increasing percentage of the box office. It just depends on people's habits. I think it's going to go up for a while because I think if you want to leave the home, you want something really different than the couch you've been chained to for the last year and a half, and IMAX provides that.
So tell me then about the expansion plans for China and Japan as we're moving out of the pandemic. Did that affect those plans at all, particularly in China? That's very much, it seems like a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to COVID cases.
It really hasn't, and in fact, China was our largest market in the world during the pandemic because even though they had zero tolerance, it was floating. So we have 800 screens in China, and during most of the time, the vast, vast majority were open. So there might be 20 closing at one time, 40 closing at one time. But the way it's geared up, they open extremely rapidly. So just this last weekend on Dune, again, we did over 20% of the Chinese box office on 1% of the screens. There were some theaters closed, but yet the results were extremely impressive. So they just deal with it differently than we deal with it here. Small closures for short periods of time.